So we are live, officially live, for the first episode of The Real Virtual Show. I'm your host, Malia Probst. This is Blake Liebel, my co-host today, and we are talking with Mike Murdock of OtherworldVR. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, like I was saying before, it's an impressive microphone.
Yes, it is majestic.
It's a majestic microphone. So Mike is co-founder of OtherworldVR, and he's been doing some mixed reality directing, some virtual reality directing. When we're talking about how you're directing in virtual reality, what does that consist of? You know, I think we've all watched movies and we're all very familiar with traditional media, but how is that kind of a little bit different in virtual reality? How's that director role sort of shift?
Sure. Well, first, I think taking a step back and talking about what virtual reality is, because there's so many different features and facets of it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm getting a bit of an echo, so I'm going to do one ear cup on. That should be better.
Okay.
So directing is all about telling the story and getting the performance you want so that the audience can come in and really enjoy your story. We do all of our work in game engines. So we use Unity 3D, which is a really nice game engine, and we build stories in that space. So this is one of those cases of saying, like, what is the story and how is that different when you're inside of it? Because virtual reality is really about being inside of the story world. It's not about watching a story. It's about going to the place where the story happens. And actually, this might be useful. I have right here. This is one of the Oculus Rift DK2 development kits. So you can put on these goggles.
That's so cool.
Like this kind of thing. And this one's not plugged in. But it hooks up to your computer, and it's got a screen inside, and it's got lenses, and you feel like you're there. So it's kind of about, you know, telling the story, but also crafting a story world that the audience can just go to and enjoy that.
So and would you call that the DK1? That's the developer's version of the Oculus headset, right?
Yeah, I have one of the DK1s in my closet. This one's the DK2. And
Gotcha.
Actually, let me just pull up a link, and I'll drop that so anybody can take a look at the images.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's actually not, it can be complicated, but it's actually not too complicated. So think of it just like you need a cell phone screen and you need a gyro. And if you combine those two elements, the screen displays the images and the gyroscope tells the user where they're looking. So like your cell phone can orient itself, look this way or that way. Well, if you attach the device to your head, now we know where you're looking. And just like the old Viewmasters from the days of yore, we're doing the same thing, but with these cellular phone technologies. So let me just drop the link for the DK2. This is what it looks like for anybody interested. And this is
Cool.
The second development kit that Oculus has come out with. And they're pretty amazing. Like, you put on these goggles and you're there. But the tricky thing is figuring out how to tell stories that you're inside of rather than stories that you are filming or just, for example, going to the play or reading a book. This is a completely new thing.
So virtual reality has deep roots.
Yes.
And it's not just bubbling to the surface now. It didn't just start. Virtual reality has been quietly bubbling in the background for quite some time. And so the first wave was kind of in the 90s. And how is this any different, Mike? Why is virtual reality different now than, isn't it like the 90s? Doesn't it kind of suck?
Well, it does still look goofy. Let's see, I had another image for this. Let's see, this one, if anybody is there. So that is the virtual reality system that NASA had come up with in the 80s. And you can see he's like having an amazing time. The hair is being blown back. It's awesome. But what NASA was interested in the mid 80s was how do we solve weight if we're going to take these things into space? NASA has a protocol where they need to have backup units for all of their hardware that's on a space station or space shuttle. So for example, I have a screen that displays some information, but if that one fails, I need to have a backup screen. And if the backup fails, I need to have a backup screen. And all these things take up space and they are pretty heavy. So what NASA was researching is, can't we just take up some of these lightweight VR displays, and instead of having a ton of screens and computers all over the place, why don't we just use these head-mounted? Because you can simulate as many screens as you want using them. So that's kind of why NASA was really interested in it, is to solve money for rocket fuel and space requirements for space flight and space travel, as well as, let's say, astronauts on a long term voyage, and they can put on the goggles, and it helps them, feel like they're not in a tiny tin can in space. But after that, the military had really picked up on the training applications of virtual reality. So, for example, you can take a soldier to an environment that they had been to in real life and have some sort of adverse effect like stress, post-traumatic stress, and take them back in a safe environment to help them work through some of the problems that they encounter on the field. And so it was designed for therapeutic to help treat post-traumatic stress disorder, but also to train soldiers in combat.
Have there any been or strategic applications where specific locations could be studied and walked through, so if they ever had to go to that zone, they'd be slightly familiar with the environment?
It seems likely. I haven't heard any of that happening. But one thing that people are doing is they're taking a bunch of photos from like the Mars rover, for example, and reconstructing a 3D environment out of that, so you can kind of feel like you're in Mars. It's a neat sort of thing because nobody's actually walked on the planet, as far as we know. But you can virtually feel like you're there using all the photographic reference. One thing that I would say is a segment of virtual reality is training simulators. So the cockpit of a airplane. That sort of thing still falls under virtual reality, but it's been used by the military and private air corporations to train pilots forever. They saw the value in it, and it definitely works.
Well, yeah, but to be able to update the environment to real world, places would be even more helpful. After they've mastered piloting, they could then simulate flying through specific mountains and areas that when they finally did arrive there, they'd be a lot more comfortable. And that can be very interesting. Is stuff like that underway?
So a lot of information like from maps is fed into these training simulators so that people are familiar with the terrain and everything. So pilots have done that for a while. And there's a really cool technique where you can take a series of photographs and recombine them into a 3D model. It's called photogrammetry. And that allows you to take a bunch of photographs of an environment and reconstruct it so that you can be there virtually as well. You can also use like LiDAR scanning. That's a laser scanning system to kind of build these environments as well. So there's a lot of techniques.
So in the 90s, so it's been in the military, it's been lots of space stuff, lots of cutting edge technology. I'm kind of in the 80s, and then in the 90s, people started saying, hey, let's kind of use this for entertainment. And so, Nintendo had, what was it called? Virtual Boy, I think. How is this different now? Why is this wave of virtual reality technology and innovation going to succeed, and where it didn't perhaps take off in the past?
Well, for starters, in the 90s, it was pretty bad. But right now, one of the reasons why we're so excited about it is we have the internet this time. In the 90s, there wasn't the internet like we're using right now. And so built into virtual reality is this social aspect that we're so excited about. So you can just jump on line or into virtual reality and hang out with your friend and kind of feel like you're physically there as well. So we see an amazing potential now that we have the internet and all this connectivity to to bring people into it together. In the 90s, it was a very isolating experience where one person at a time, and there was no multiple players, multi-users, anything like that. The other thing is the computers are so much more powerful now, and all the hardware, the tech side has really developed. The big reason behind that is the cell phone market exploded, and a lot of that technology is helping drive the virtual reality, I guess, golden era that we're kind of hopefully starting right now.
So how quickly do you think this technology can be made smaller, can be made lighter, can really, how good can phones get so that the mobile content can be good enough so that everyone can access this type of content wherever they are in the world? Like, how soon do you think we're going to come with that technology?
I like the analogy that where we are in virtual reality right now is the like massive 80s brick cell phone. This is the like classic giant gray beast of a cell phone where people who needed it, they could have it. It was good enough for them if they needed to use that every day. But since then, cell phones have gotten a lot different. So we're still very early in virtual reality. However, if you want it right now, you can have it. It is good enough. And so the cell phone in your pocket, if you have a smartphone from the last couple of years, it can probably run virtual reality. Actually, here, let me drop in my second link to anybody interested. This is the Google Cardboard viewer. And what that is just like the Viewmasters of yore. It's a cardboard thing that you fold up and you can slide your phone into it, and you can use your phone to view virtual reality content. So it's very accessible.
So what's the price
right
point
now.
On one of those?
Google Cardboards tend to run about $10 to $30, depending on if you want the base level or the premium one. But they are made out of cardboard, and they have plastic lenses in them that help your eyes focus, even though the screen of your phone is really close to your eyes. So it's a pretty comfortable viewing experience.
Are any sunglass companies making accessories or additions to popular brands that you've heard of?
That's a good question. Not that I've really heard of yet. I think they're waiting for everybody else to kind of figure it out. But no, we need more stylish VR goggles, that's for sure. So I hope they get behind it.
Yes, indeed.
Can we kind of, I want to back up here, and I want to kind of address sort of this umbrella term of immersive reality. Mike, everyone hears virtual reality. We hear augmented reality. We hear mixed reality. What do all those terms mean?
They don't really mean anything yet. I think like they mean something, but we're still trying to find the terms. We'll start talking about things and not really find the right words. And we're like, no, it needs to be something like this. So immersive realities, like it's up to us to figure out what that actually, oh, this GIF is amazing, by the way. But I've heard the term immersive media, immersive realities, or just virtual or augmented reality. A term I really like is mixed reality, and that is virtual and augmented. But as far as what does it mean, I started looking at some of the past mediums, and like you can go to the opera or go to a play, and it's about you going to this other place for the performance. You go to the movies as well. When you are viewing TV, you're just watching it. And when you're in virtual reality, that's it. You are inside that experience. You're not watching it, you are in it. And one thing that I'm really interested in pushing is how do we create medium or stories and games that you need to be inside of them, otherwise it doesn't really work. And that's what really gets me excited. So I think that's what the challenge is behind immersive realities, is make realities that are better if you're inside of them. And that's what gets me really excited about this.
So video games are going to be absolutely enormous in virtual reality. And Blake, you are kind of the video game expert, right? You're tell us about your video game history and how you kind of got into it.
Well, I've enjoyed games since I was very, very young, and in my teenage years, I took PC gaming very seriously and played Half-Life at a very competitive level and achieved fine results.
I think you were number one in the world.
Yes, indeed. For many, it was very enjoyable. That kind of evolved into a lot of what Call of Duty is, and Call of Duty makes what Half-Life was very accessible to the masses by being able to log onto servers very efficiently and quickly. Everything is ranked. It's a lot of order, but it evolved into what gaming is now. Curiously, with virtual reality, one would hope to see very scaled back games in the vein of old Nintendo so they could be enjoyed by all, because immersing your head into a World War II setting would indeed be, horrific and probably cause some interesting nightmares if you played before bed.
What do you see going on in video games now, Mike, and Blake as well? Have you been able to get your hands on any virtual reality video games? Like, what does that look like?
Great question. Everybody's trying everything. I've seen everything from first-person shooters like Half-Life. I'm working on a strategy game now that puts you in a sky kingdom with floating islands, and you get to command your troops against a skeleton horde.
Awesome.
And I've made an arcade game that's called Robo Obliteration before. So everybody's trying everything, and it's amazing. When you encounter something that like completely doesn't work, you're like, oh, well, that was awful. However, we're the first people to have this problem. Like, we're the first people to encounter why it doesn't work. And so if we push it along a little bit and figure out how to make it work, that's genuine improvement for the entire industry. And it's progress. And it's really exciting to be at the cutting edge right there. But yeah, every type of game is being tried right now. Oh, looks like Blake is...
no, he's audio only.
No, come on, Blake. Maybe we can sing props to bring him back.
It's clapping like he was Tinkerbell.
Oh, no, is my camera
Yeah,
on?
the camera's off, but you're still audio only, so we can still hear you. If you press the refresh button, that might help a little bit. That might kind of jumpstart it. But so Mike, so you are doing video game development in virtual reality now, and then you're also telling stories in virtual reality as well. What are some specifics of how telling a video story game, because storytelling is very much intrinsic to a good video game, how is that different than traditional video games, and what specific challenges present themselves in virtual reality when developing traditional video games are not there?
One of the biggest challenges is telling the user where to look. Like in a movie, you just point the camera at what you want people to see, and you assume they're going to see it if they're watching the movie. The challenging thing in virtual reality is you can look wherever you want. The gyroscope in the device tells you where you're looking, and so it's really challenging to tell a story when you have to let go of control, and you can let the audience just look wherever they want. So it's more about experiencing the story or the environment that the story takes place in than telling somebody, look here at this time, otherwise you're going to miss it. And certain other things, like from cinema, if something's really important, you can do a close-up and you can put the camera right next to it, and the audience really doesn't know that there's a camera there. It's transparent. They can't see the camera, but they can see, what's important to the story. In virtual reality, you can't put the camera right up next to something because that's actually the audience's head. It would be like somebody grabbing your head and like jamming it right up to something and saying, look at this. That's really uncomfortable.
Colleen has a good question. What arises for users when it comes to playing a game in virtual reality that can't ever be real versus playing a game that has looked very real on a present-day game. As in a fantasy game similar to the one Mike just described that he's working on, adjusting, like coming back from that kind of virtual reality. Or would it be an issue? Gotcha. That's interesting. I don't know. What do you think on that, Mike? In terms of simpler games kind of being better for the medium, in terms of simple games being less jarring, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah, so as far as jarring or that sort of approach, one of the big challenges we have right now is called simulator sickness. And what that is, for a certain percentage of people, you can feel like you have a headache or you can feel nauseous after trying these virtual reality experiences. So this is a big challenge, but there are things we can do to help mitigate the problems. One of the reasons that causes that is, if you think about this, in virtual reality, we're taking over your senses. So we take over all of your visual sense and we recreate our own using the headset. The challenge is, let's say I'm running in the virtual environment really fast, but in real life, I'm sitting on the couch. So my eyes are telling me, oh, you're running at 5 meters per second, which I think is about Usain Bolt speed. I might be off on that, but fast. You're moving very fast. Your inner ear that tells your body how you're oriented, what direction gravity is pulling you in, how fast you're moving, tells you you're sitting down on the couch and not moving at all. So you get signal interference. Your eyes tell you you're moving, your ears tell you you're not, and that can make people feel nauseous. The way we get around that is instead of making games where the user has to go out into the world and find things, we try to bring all that content to the person who's playing the game. One of our solutions for our game, Robo Obliteration, was we have these spherical planets and asteroids that are hovering right in front of you. So to explore that level, we simply rotate the planet to come towards you. Then it's as if you're sitting on your couch playing a game, and in the middle of your living room, there's this giant asteroid that you're watching the game take place on. And that sort of experience is much, much more comfortable for the player of the game. And it gets around this problem of movement. So we're just being really nice to the user. We're trying to open up the experiences to as wide an audience as possible. And as a result, we design these experiences that are amazing. They look visually spectacular. And we don't ask the user or the audience to run through this giant virtual world, which we know can cause problems of motion sickness.
So people, and I've heard stories. Every experience I've ever been in, I've never gotten motion sick. I've never gotten a headache. Have you ever gotten sick or anything, Blake? Have you ever had any of those kind of experiences after a virtual reality video game or just consuming some type of content?
Well, yes, the virtual reality experience, if it's forceful, and it's aggressive, it can cause nausea and another discomfort in the eyes. What I'm hoping, or we're hoping to see with virtual reality, is a slow easing in. Going back to the comment from earlier regarding simpler games, the simpler games are also contingent on the artwork and the line work that is selected. So right from the very start, you're making something that is very shapely in a circular fashion, that is colored friendly on the eye, that is not filled with an immense amount of detail, which will be extremely jarring and nauseating up close because you will be processing millions of triangles at a level that's just the eye is not accustomed to. So bearing all that in mind, if you make a delightful environment, be it a forest or, the bottom of the ocean, and you have auditory signals that tell the gamer or viewer, get ready, we're going to go 50 feet deeper, and the submarine is going to be quick, then at this point, your body will get ready to physically make that change. And as long as it's slow enough, and, it can be very pleasing and enjoyable. But if anything is thrust at you, you have to have time to prepare, to enjoy. And I think a lot of auditory preparatory, comments could be very great for that, as long as it was done by a friendly narrator or storyteller.
Yeah, that's which kind of actually brings up, that's an interesting segue into this topic that I kind of find Sometimes disturbing. What about if the potential of having an unfriendly developer? And Mike, you're saying when we go into these environments, when people like you are creating these environments, they're so immersive and they seem so real. What if the woman developing the game was not a friendly game developer and kind of, what about that? Like kind of misleading the audience?
So yeah, you're asking a lot of your audience, first of all, because they give you their entire sense of sight. If you're wearing headphones, their entire sense of hearing. That's a big responsibility. So we try to play it safe. But some things that happen, like I played Half-Life 2, there's a version in virtual reality, and I'm running around in this virtual world, and because of this disparity between my visual system and my inner ear, I had to lay on the couch like for 45 minutes after that because I just kind of felt nauseous. So if they're not nice to the audience, you're going to lose the audience. So there is another side to that where you can actually kind of become acclimated to virtual reality. After a while, after doing it, you can kind of learn to suppress that disparity where your brain doesn't mind as much. And it's a little bit more similar to like airplane pilots. They get used to these speeds and these G-forces and everything like that. So you can acclimate your brain to them. For first-time users, we try not to move them at all, but we have a visually spectacular story or experience happening around them.
Gotcha. So we keep hearing about virtual reality everywhere. We really keep hearing, if anyone, reads anything, any kind of tech news, any kind of business news, you're seeing a lot about this. And so most people haven't tried it. So how can we try it? How can people go out there and find it and be able to, immerse themselves in this and try it for themselves? Where can we do that? What's available now? And then what's on the near roadmap?
So the first thing I would say, if you're interested in this, try to grab a Google Cardboard. You can buy them off Amazon, and you can use your smartphone. And there's Apple experiences. They're just apps you can download from the regular store and try them out. Same thing on the Android store. And that's the easiest and cheapest way to try it. You'll spend about $20 and you'll get to give it a go. There is, let me see if I can find it. There's some high-end devices that are coming to the market next year in 2016. And let's see.
It's the Rift. Yeah, the Oculus Rift is coming out in spring 2016. PlayStation VR is coming out in 2016, first quarter as well. And then we have a couple. I've been hearing about a couple of these $99 priced headsets that are coming out just in time for the holidays. Are you familiar with those particular devices? And I'm thinking that could be a really, really big holiday toy, holiday gift, for the tech person that because that price point is so accessible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, so the two devices, there's a lot of them, and companies are making like high-end Google Cardboards that cost more. The first one I'd look at, if you've got a Samsung phone from the last couple years, and I just dropped the link in the chat, is the Samsung Gear VR. And it only works with a certain number of Samsung phones, but if you get this, it's between, I think, $100 and $200, and that is the best experience you can have in virtual reality with a mobile phone right now. It is, it's a great device. And it gets around a lot of the problems of virtual reality, where it's a curated experience of applications that tell you how comfortable they are. So if you're kind of prone to motion sickness, just choose the ones that don't have that. The other one I really like, if you don't have a Samsung phone, let me just pull it up here, is the Merge VR viewer. And this is like a marshmallow soft foam virtual reality viewer you can drop your phone into. Purple? It's awesome.
Yes.
Yes,
Very cool.
It's the bright purple
Very
one.
cool. So that's something that you can put a mobile device in, and then that'll work through that, correct? Gotcha.
Yes. And so with the Samsung one, you can only get the applications from their store within the Gear VR. However, with the Merge one, you can get applications from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and it's really great. I mean, it's more open, and you don't need, I think, one of 4 models from the Samsung side of things. It's open to more phones.
Well, that's very interesting on the commercial front. What options are there for large industry, if any?
So you mean like other businesses?
Well, if you wanted to
besides
fix maybe a machine or an assembly line or see inside of an engine and really explore, what would be the most industrious, high-end, large-scale device one would be able to use if they wanted to fix something, maybe on a heavy piece of equipment?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So right now we're at a place where the consumer VR devices are about as good as the high-end military ones. So we're kind of like, the tech is good enough now for consumer grade stuff. And just a few years ago, it would take like $100,000 motion capture system, several tens of $1,000s of computers, and then probably about a $50,000 hand-built headset just to get up and running with this stuff. And now the prices are like, here's the cell phone in your pocket. It's really great. So for these high-end devices, there's the Oculus Rift coming out next year. There's the HTC Vive, which uses this crazy futuristic laser tracking system to figure where you are in a room, and you can walk around wherever you want in the virtual world and in the real room. And then there's a device that attaches to the Sony PlayStation 4. But more to your question, like, what are the other applications and how can we, what are other uses for virtual reality aside from entertainment, and how do we get access to those? Does that sound right?
Yes, it's such a diverse range. When you talk about entertainment, because you're dealing with, art and cartoons, it very much falls into children's animation, which has remained, a staple for what animation is used for. So hopefully the video games on virtual reality will follow the same suit, because these are, dopamine, serotonin generating pieces of entertainment for children. And once they switch into that ultra violence, like, it's unfortunate that you had to experience Half-Life through virtual reality. A metallic color palette and the dark settings and being in a first person shooter does not lend itself in any way to virtual reality. There would be no way to acclimate yourself to that unless you were very hard, unless, certain people would indeed be able to, pilots, astronauts, but the regular person would not be able to play a first person shooter in virtual reality without getting very sick.
Yeah. It's choosing the type of content that works for you. One thing that I'll bring up that I think is a really cool application, the link I just dropped in, is Project Blue Shark.
I love the name, and I want to try it no matter what it is.
So this was done through a research lab called the Mixed Realities Lab with USC, where I went to film school. And there's some great images in the link, but essentially what the question was is the people who are going to be manning battleships for the Navy 20 years from now, right now, are just growing up and they only know a world of tablets and smartphones and just easy to use computers. So let's go ahead 20 years in the future and build this interface right now to see if we can figure out some of the challenges that they're going to have to encounter. And it's amazing. They have hand tracking devices where you can remotely operate a robotic arm from this virtual reality command center. It's also got virtual cameras. So let's say you're in this virtual command center and you can jump to the crow's nest virtually and see a lay of the entire environment around you, or you might be able to go to the engine room and see what that's like. So it's the ability to teleport you wherever you're needed for that current task.
That's sounds amazing. Blue Shark is a fantastic name. Yeah.
It's pretty great.
And then,
and in the link, you can see one of the prototype head-mounted displays that came before the Oculus Rift. It's called the Wide 5, and I've got a chance to try it. It's pretty amazing.
I want to address some of these questions. Lee had a great question. He asked, how is virtual reality being used in psychotherapy? You know, I know that there are a couple of labs kind of going on. There's some at USC, what you just mentioned, they're kind of running some tests over there to see how this can treat some forms of mental illness as well as PTSD, anxiety, phobias such as fear of heights. Have you seen any of that? What do you think about that kind of stuff, Mike?
I'm trying to remember the company, but there is I think it's Deepstream VR. Don't hold me on this, but they're a company dedicated to medical application for long-term chronic pain sufferers. So somebody who's got a lot of burn damage or other types of chronic pain problems, it's helping them meditate, helping them go to other environments while they're recuperating or recovering from their injuries. So for example, a burn victim can't be around a lot of contaminants because they're especially susceptible to bacteria and viruses while their skin repairs itself. So they can feel isolated and miss a lot of the social contact that they really need. So virtual reality allows them to have that social contact or go to these environments like a meditative garden or wherever they want, really, because they can't do that in real life at that time. So it's really useful in that sense. I've seen applications where people can overcome their fears. You can sit at a desk and put your virtual hands on the desk and watch spiders crawl all over them if you have a spider phobia. So it allows you to safely do these types of immersion treatments for psychotherapy where they expose you to what you fear and they can help you get over that fear of it.
So it's so are you talking about exposure therapy kind of combined with virtual reality then?
Yeah. And the thing is, it works. The military's been using virtual reality to train pilots, soldiers, since as soon as virtual reality existed. They continue doing it because it works. So you can help get over these fears using virtual exposure, essentially.
I see a couple of interesting questions kind of around this topic that are all kind of interwoven together. There's a question about if your body is going to feel fatigue after being in virtual reality, saying after running really fast, would your body get tired in real life? And then dentists are testing virtual reality at the moment to allow them to use less drugs. So all this kind of has to do with pain and pain management, and it's kind of tricking your brain into thinking that it's not feeling pain. Is that kind of on the right track?
Yeah, I think so. So the other aspect of this is, let's say you're running in the virtual world. Does your brain perceive that you're running in the real world, and do you feel fatigued? Because your brain is always used to getting the physical fatigue when it experiences the senses being fatigued. I haven't really experienced that. I don't feel like my body's exhausted after being in a virtual experience for a while. But one thing I will say is scale is really important. If you don't get the scale exactly right, people can feel like the world's too big or too small, and it can feel weird when you get out of the virtual world. One of the best examples is called redirected walking.
Okay, and so that's sort of
my stream is
so redirected walking is sort of when you kind of trick the brain into thinking that it's walking way more than it is, but you're really only covering a certain smaller part, a certain smaller area, right? So like you can be walking around your room, and the way that the virtual reality sort of massages your brain, you think you're walking around the countryside. How do they do that? That's crazy.
Yeah, so the project Redirected Walking is all about making a small physical space feel like a large virtual space. And here's the simplest example of how it works. You walk into a room and you the door is behind you. So when you start turning around to exit the door again, the computer algorithms shifts how much you're actually turning. So in the real world, you actually turn 90 degrees, but in the virtual world, you feel like you've turned 180 degrees. So your brain isn't as good at perceiving these changes in angles when you're turning. The long story short is you actually walk around in circles in the real life, but you feel like you're walking for large spaces or an infinite space in the virtual world.
That sounds like that could cause a lot of visual fatigue, quite quickly, which is what the body would probably be tired for afterwards.
Yeah, it works very well, but it takes me like 30 minutes sometimes to reorient when I take the goggles off. The real world feels a little bit off, and it takes you a while to get used to it again.
Have you run up against, this is a great question from David, about the advertising ecosystem in future virtual reality and augmented reality. So, native advertising is something that we're very accustomed to now in our kind of traditional media world. But as we as consumers go towards mass adoption, there will be definitely virtual advertisements. So have you come across that at all? Have you heard any chitter chatter?
Yes. Advertising and marketing is the biggest market in virtual reality right now. A lot of people and advertising firms are using the Google Cardboard devices to basically show people immersive ads. So I've seen a great one for Jurassic World, where you get to have this encounter with a dinosaur, and it like stands up and eats a leaf from the tree above you, and then it feels massive. It's amazing. But that's used to advertise for the movie. So it's an immersive environment, but it's tied to selling the movie, or in some cases, the brand values. Like, for example, Dos Equis did one for The World's Most Interesting Man. And you're sitting in his living room, and a tiger walks in, and a masquerade party starts happening. It's an amazing experience, but ultimately it's for selling a product.
So that's sort of the next frontier of advertising, perhaps. Is that the wild, wild west of native advertising, perhaps?
It definitely is. One thing about it is you can't look away from the ad, because you're inside the ad, which advertisers like. But the other thing is, because we know exactly where you're looking, we know if the audiences have actually looked at the logos or exactly what they've seen. So a lot of data is going to be flowing in from these immersive ads that gives advertisers really good feedback as to what works and what doesn't, and what people are actually looking at.
So by using eye tracking, we are going to have so much more data on you and your habits and your unconscious habits as well. Because really, when you think about it, think of how your eyes look all the time. It's, all over the place. It's actually quite difficult to stop looking at things sometimes. And so with that it seems very, very, very private almost.
Yeah, that's a big concern. Right now, I should say eye tracking is on the horizon, but it's not quite here yet. So you don't have to worry about it for probably a couple weeks, depending on how fast things develop.
Things are going really, really, really fast.
Things are going really fast.
Things are going really, really
Realistically, fast. Though, it's probably a couple years before eye tracking is good enough to go into these virtual experiences and the virtual reality devices.
I'm trying to so Mitch Jackson had a good question about how close are we to really taking things like virtual vacations? How close are we to really getting to enjoy being on the beach in Maui when you're actually just getting home from work and you're buried in snow and it's January in New Jersey?
Yeah, we all need that occasionally. There are companies doing that right now. There are people who take these crazy camera rigs out to beaches and everything, and you can put on the headset and you can look around wherever you want. Let me see. I will pull up an example and drop that right in the chat. There's a company called Little Star that they have a portal for VR video. And you feel like you're on the beach.
Amazing. C. McIntosh says that there are VR suits with small temperature controls. So going back to a comment about VR gloves, and we were talking about fans, and we're talking about all these sort of different devices that help the pixels convince our brains that we're really, really there. Can we talk a little bit about those sort of supplementary devices that are adding all of these additional stimuli to really give us a virtual experience?
Sure. I'll pull up one of my, this device kind of looks ridiculous, but it's really interesting. You strap yourself into this omnidirectional treadmill thing, and you can walk around in the virtual world and the real world. So that's to help you give the impression of walking, and in the virtual world, you also walk. As far as these other types of devices, I've seen a vest that you can wear that gives you a bit of feedback physically when you're being touched. As far as heat and cold, I haven't seen too many consumer devices like that. I know they're probably coming, but
what
not
about
yet.
Clothing, as Malia mentioned, almost right down to the shoes? Because to truly get the immersive experience, your clothes would have to react or at least engage and know where they were in relation to what you were doing to really enhance the experience.
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that's on the horizon. I've seen some research done where you can put trackers in shoes so you know when people are walking, all that sort of stuff. It's not quite here yet. There will be some in the next few years. The challenge is, I think people like sitting on their couch and watching
you can still
TV.
do it sitting.
And virtual reality, yeah, but virtual reality asks you to get up and walk around in these worlds if you want to do that. So some people are definitely going to want to put on everything, get on the treadmill, and run through these virtual worlds. Other people are going to want to sit on their couch. And I think the first major market is going to be sitting on your couch and checking out this amazing experience.
That makes me wonder, have you seen any great fishing video games or simulations? Because that's something that lends itself.
Oh, for sure. It's got to happen. Actually, I think there's a company making a fishing game now.
Yeah, you could send out the rod and then you could become the yeah, that's pretty interesting. But you haven't seen anything firsthand?
Not yet in that front. But there are some awesome research projects being done by like Microsoft that allow you to put on, virtual garments. Well, I should say tech-infused garments that they can track where you are. They can give you little impulses, a little bit of feedback.
It's amazing. I wanted to sort of dig into this topic of sport. And Chris had a great question about how virtual reality is being used with athletics and sports. And, I'm aware of the Striver system, which is out of Stanford, that current NFL teams and current college football teams are using right now. They're using 360 video to capture plays and practices. So instead of watching traditional tape, what these athletes are then able to do is they're actually able to relive that experience. So they're able to step back into the position where they were and relive that snap and see exactly why that pocket collapsed and see exactly when they missed the open receiver or, they didn't see the blitz coming, whatever that case may be. So it's being used in NFL this season, is being used in college this season as well. And I think that it's getting into the NBA. They're starting to kind of see how that can be used with athletic training. What about you? Do you have you come up with any of that? I think the guy at Stanford is Jeremy Bailenson, who kind of heads up that athletic program.
Yeah. One of the important things about sports is visualizing the action that you're going to be in. And if you have the mental determination and you have the muscle memory already there, then you're more likely to succeed in sports because you're confident in the visualization of what you want to do. I have a great picture here of Bill Gates playing tennis in a virtual experience. It was on Twitter. But yeah, you can play tennis, you can dive into these things. You can experience kind of the visceral thrill of sports in an environment that you really can't fail at. But it also builds the positive feedback of, visualizing your body doing things and helping in that aspect. In the same reason that the military has been training soldiers with this, because it works.
I just saw the time. I'm going to open up that fourth seat. It seemed like there are a couple of people in the chat who really have some pretty good experience and hands-on experience in developing. It seems like there are some people with quite a bit of knowledge to share. And hey, even if you have zero knowledge to share, hey, ask a question. You know what I mean? It'd be a general contractor coming and saying, hey, I'm in construction. How can this possibly benefit me? How does this affect me in my industry? So we got Craig McIntosh coming in right now. Craig, thank you for calling in. Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
So nice to meet you. Thank you for popping on. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for giving me a seat.
Hello.
I hope I added some valuable content and insight to in the chat area. VR has been of interest to me since 2003-04 when, as I said in the sidebar to you earlier on, I was in real estate in Bulgaria. Funny enough, and we implemented the iPix 360 photography system. You might be aware of it, Mike. You might have heard of iPix.
There's a lot of companies doing immersive photography, immersive cinema.
So we were one of the first, and that's where I got my first feel for VR. I'll be honest with you. I was trying to do something different then, and that was like 12 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
It was a Canon Coolpix 8800 or something like that, 8 megapixel job, and it took a fisheye lens and took a 185 image and another 185 image, stitched it together, and it put people at the center so they could look around, and with their mouse they could zoom in and zoom out. So there was a bit of that, but it wasn't truly immersive in the sense that was all flat on the screen.
That's amazing. Actually, just today, there was a new camera announced. I'll drop it in the chat.
Yeah, the Lytro. Yes.
And
yes,
it's pretty amazing. It doesn't look like a camera.
Yeah, no, if I'm right,
that's how far things have come.
If I'm right in thinking with that one, I saw that a few years ago in a Kickstarter campaign, and it takes thousands of photos because it basically allows you to change the you can make what's in front of you seem clearer and what's behind it blurred. But then you can also change the focal point within the actual image in real time. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. It's a technique called light field photography.
Yeah, and I showed you before as well. I've been following this company in Europe that are doing these gloves. Now, where's my interest? I'm 46, right? I got an 8-year-old daughter. My 8-year-old daughter loves her iPad, loves her iPhone, loves tab, right? If I give her a computer now, she's bored. Do you know what I mean? She doesn't like that concept of keys and that. And I was one of the first as well, by the way, way back, looking at what used to be called IBM Via Voice for voice to speech to text, right? And back in those days, the problem was the computers were too slow to process the speed of the voice to create. But now we've got Dragon Dictate 4. So I see voice recognition, voice interaction. I see the Oculus Rifts. I'm seeing the VR gloves. I sent a link in the side where people are looking at the suits. I'm seeing this where basically someone could be head to toe at home working on a project thousands of miles away, because I've also seen where doctors are now experimenting in the US with the UK of carrying out operations. The doctor puts on his headset, he's seeing everything, he's got the same equipment at his end in the US, and he's moving it, but the arms are moving in real time in London and actually doing the operation that only that doctor can do. Now, I'm saying to myself, my God, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. She's going to live, they say, to 100. So there's 90, that's what they say. That
It's pretty amazing.
And this is where I see the excitement of VR, of integrating voice, touch, feel. I just say the hardest thing is smell and taste. I think we've got a long way off from getting that. But if we can get,
how far away you think we are, Craig, from olfactory packs? Like, or what if just putting a little electrode in the brain to kind of stimulate your olfactory system neurally?
I will be honest with you. Okay, we're getting into Matrix territory, and I know you had a little joke. My wife knows, right? I'm 46. I was there back in the old days of the ZX80, which was back in 1982. I got my first ever little computer, and it ran BASIC language. And I was there before the internet. I was one of the first to get a diploma in computing in 1991, before the internet in the UK. And I've got my degree in it. So Matrix, as far as I'm concerned, if they had that facility tomorrow, John, he can just step aside. They can just plug me in now. I would do it, but I would hate to see it happen to my kids, because then everything could be hacked, and someone could hack their way into that chip and start doing things to people all over the world that you wouldn't want. So I'm not in agreement to that, but I would like people to have the choice to zip up, strap in, and do some good around the world. Take the knowledge, the skills, and if someone's got a unique skill in America, does it not make sense that someone maybe in China needs that operation and we could carry that out? Now, wouldn't that be cool?
Absolutely.
Now, by
that
the way,
sounds wonderful.
Cool.
I've seen VR being used that way, by the way, to break down the geographical barriers further.
Yeah. This is another way for humans. This is another way for humans to connect, and I think that the more good stuff that's out there, the more good stuff we put out there. Listen, we can all go down that dystopian rabbit hole, right? The dystopian view is pretty easy to see. Science fiction has been kind of touting that aspect of virtual reality for a long time. And so going back to what you're saying, Craig, it as a means, as a vehicle for people to connect, Oculus just came out with, what is it called? Is it called Social Alpha, Mike? Are you familiar with that? Blake, have you seen that? But it's a way in which people can actually consume content together. And there are lots of companies that are doing social integration and bringing that social experience to be able to consume content together or play a game together. So it's like you could play a game with your friend from across the world in virtual reality as though the both of you are still there.
Look at a few things here. We're all looking for more transparency in government, right?
That's something.
Now, let's take the 360.tv, the Gripto, this little 360-degree video camera that literally is basically only a couple of inches high, right? Now we get that actually into Baghdad at the time of the bombs being dropped. Now you're getting into a new one. Now people are getting to share with the world in real time, high definition video in a virtual reality world that would allow you to be standing in the middle of Baghdad when it was going on. So you get to know the consequences of your government's actions. Now, would that make us maybe think more diplomatically rather than from the military point of view? I'm not.
I think that I love that angle. I love that. Anything that is going to hold people more accountable in any industry, in any space, kind of anywhere. Whatever makes people
or a paraplegic
more
getting the opportunity to experience the concept of walking through the Serengeti or through a rainforest. I see Blake likes that. You see Blake like
yes, that would be very wonderful.
Now you see, now I get what Mike was saying as well. By the way, in fact, Gilbert was saying it too. A friend of mine who is probably on the sidelines. he was saying too about the concept of the seasickness. But that's not uncommon, by the way, that yes, he was saying that 20% of people had this effect. It had that effect when they now that's not uncommon because, funny enough, statistically speaking, and I know because I have ear damage, 20% of people actually do have at birth inner ear defects. There you go.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a very, very large percentage.
And
That's
it's the inner ear.
That's 2 out of 10. I just did the math.
Yeah, and the inner ear is what makes you give that feeling of, and if your inner ear canals are wrong or there's fluid behind them, which is very common, by the way, it usually tends to be a lot of fluid behind them, and that's why you get the typical operations like grommets to allow your ears to breathe. But if your ears are not breathing, that's why you get seasickness. So that's probably what's causing a lot of people to have problems with VR headsets and the seasickness. Am I right, Mike?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they're doing a lot of studies and trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying everything. I actually haven't heard those statistics on the inner ear.
What you can do, Mike,
do you have any references? I'd love to read more about
it. And if you shoot over to me, I'll get the data to you. There you go.
Beautiful.
I know it. All I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go and dig down my directory structure and find it for you. But I know I have it, so that's fine. I like to work on, as I said in many things. I don't listen to talk. I listen to facts.
All right, I like that.
I'm going to jump off.
Craig, thank
you
so much. I'm so glad. Thank you for jumping on, and thank you for offering such amazing value. And I really appreciate it. It was very nice to meet you.
I only offer value where there's a value show, and I thank you for the show.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Okay. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Well, that was how lovely. So let's see. Hawks dominate. We got Jonathan D'Angelo coming up next. Seemed like he had some really interesting what's up, Jonathan? How are you? Hello. So nice to meet you. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I hope there's no echo. I'm trying to be in a quiet room here, but there's a little bit of an echo in here. So am I good?
It's so minimal, it's not even there. Please, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about something that I had mentioned earlier in the comments. A company that I'm working with right now is doing some really unique things with virtual reality, working with a company based out of Seattle. There's a few companies that are putting some project together with a lot of different entities all coming together to build a laser tag facility. In fact, it's already built, where they've actually created a league of professional laser tag players like a paintball league. And they're incorporating different types of tech into the facility. Like I had talked about earlier, they're working with a drone company locally called RoboDub, and that's their sole purpose, is to build different types of drones, not just flying drones, but moving drones on the ground. And they're adding little cameras, and that's where I come in. My company does live streaming, and we're experts in the field of live streaming. So we've enabled them to put very small bullet cams on some of these drones, and they're looking to incorporate the drones in the battlefield, kind of a Call of Duty type setup when you play laser tag, not where you're just running around, pew, 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 random. There's actually different games, like Domination, all these different games that you would play on any Call of Duty game, you can actually play within the facility. And then the drones can then eventually be controlled by you or I when we're in our homes. So what they're doing is they're streaming the tournaments. They've got the Seattle Seahawks. Let me see here if you can see that. That's where, they've got the Seattle Seahawks involved. They actually own many of the players in the league. And now they are bringing in this drone technology to allow you and I to play from home against real life players on the map. So you're essentially playing augmented reality. And I think that's really the first steps into virtual reality. I don't think everybody's going to be ready to just jump right into the glasses and then be in another world. I think it's going to be little step by step that we're going to take. So anyways, I just wanted to share with you guys what's going on.
Jonathan, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for calling in, and thanks for offering that. That's really cool. So drones are getting together with a virtual reality, augmented reality tag. This is amazing. It's such a conjunction of so many different things. Technology is incredible. Jonathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you popping on.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you guys want to look up more information on the company, again, I have nothing to gain from telling you this. The company is called Virtual Sports.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
So virtualsports.net if you want to look them up. All right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful.
Excellent. Well, thank you. You guys are doing a great show. I just want to let you know, keep it up.
Yeah, thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you for popping in, Jonathan. Thank you very much. So let's see, that's virtualsports.net, it looks like. I just wrote that down. And let's see, and we have time for one more. Caller, so we are going to pop in J.S. Gilbert. He is popping in right now. He's at Gilbertism. Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Nice
Hello.
to see you.
Hey.
Ooh, the audio.
Oh, not quite yet.
Should be okay now.
No audio.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
we got
there
it.
we are.
Yes,
There we go.
indeed.
It's a tube mic. Takes a couple of seconds to warm up. So I love the topic. It's so sad, though, because people are viewing this on a flat screen that you can't actually show what it is. But I'm an older guy, too, and so I've been and I live in San Francisco, so virtual worlds. Plus, I do voices for things. So I was involved with OnLive during the .com boom, which was a virtual world, and a couple of other virtual things. I worked with a company I was going to invest in. I'm glad I didn't. Called Rapidize Digital, which was one of the early companies that created 3D films, mostly bucolic stuff and all that. Recently, I did voices for 2 Oculus Rift games, and because they were so excited about the product, I can't talk much about it because there's NDAs involved. But it was
Your secret.
It was very cool that I got to wear them and actually see my characters that I did voices for and interact with. I did not get queasy afterwards, but a lot of people have. So, these are some of the issues that we have. But I've been able to go to VR shows here, and I went a lot of startups that are working in that space and incubators and things. So it's very exciting from so many different ways. And even, you look at a platform like Blab, for example, and all the different things that individuals can do with it. I've seen applications with VR for medical. I've seen applications where they're using VR to not just for doctors to do operations, but actually where they're using VR to help people with grand mal seizure. Because right now, if you have epilepsy and you put one of those things on, you'll go crazy. But they are, and just so many different ways that they can use it for, other applications. But like computers, I think that the thing that's driving the technology and is really pushing everything forward is, of course, gaming. We wouldn't have as powerful computers now if it wasn't for gaming. And,
right.
It's kind of funny when you think about it. So, but I agree with the previous speaker. I think all of this stuff, we're used to consuming things very much the same way we have for a million years, which is either films or television, regardless of what the platform is or how it's being delivered to us. And so things like, and military applications, as Craig brings up, of course, yeah. So right now, I'm even seeing things like Periscope and Blab or whatever as being baby steps in terms of people really taking to it. And I think it's very much going to be that way with virtual reality as well. Probably going to see mass adoption happening in vertical markets, which will probably be things like medicine and gaming, and then kind of moving forward more into the mainstream. But it's just kind of my thinking. It's come so far in just a few years, though. it kind of was like flatlining for years and years and years. And then just like in the last 2-3 years, it's, going crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, I believe it's absolutely blowing up right now. We're very much on the right before the tipping point, right on the crest, right before the tipping point, you know?
I also think it'll be doing a lot of handshaking with the fact that 3D printing has gotten so big. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're looking at perhaps individuals moving more into VR space from CAD CAM as well, for in terms of like the makers and builders and so on and so forth, going from CAD CAM to the virtual 3D world and then into the actual creation using 3D printers.
Amazing. Yes, additive printing is going to be, it's going to change everything. It really
sounds
will.
Very beneficial.
It really will. So I'm looking at the time, guys, and we are just about out. And would you prefer me to call you Gilbert or JS? What do you prefer?
Gilbert is my surname, so JS is my first name, which is fine. JS, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to check and make sure we bumped into each other on Blab a little bit. So it's nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the topic and enjoyed what I had to hear. And I think it's very exciting that there are people out there that have so much energy and are putting it into this space, especially when, you know, we're not sure whether or not that energy is going to relate into proper monetization anytime soon. So there's a love for the animal first before you get a chance to cook it. So and you know, my hat's off to everybody that is working in the space. So I hope I'm around long enough to see what it becomes. That's all I could say. So.
Me too. Thank you again, JS. It's nice to see you. And we are, and I apologize for not being able to get everyone in. We definitely want to do that, and that with the constraints of time, it is what it is. So I want to say, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for offering your expertise. Blake, as always, thank you for everything, every bit of sunshine you bring to the world.
My
and
pleasure.
Thank you for co-hosting as well. And thanks for everyone who offered so many awesome questions and additions, for everyone who were able to call in today. So this will be, we're shooting for a weekly show. Might be maybe more than a week, might be a little bit less than a week. It's kind of depending on people's schedules. But what we're doing is this is going to be a 3-person format. So it's myself and a co-host, and we interview a leader, a luminary, a revolutionary, a pioneer in the virtual reality space. We talk about everything immersive reality. Next week, we are going to be interviewing a lovely man named Toby Downton. He is an author. He's the author of a book called Solar Versia, and we're going to be interviewing him next week about storytelling and about narrative and about everything virtual reality as well. So that is going to be next week on Thursday, and that's going to be 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and that will be 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Joe Wilson, if anyone's familiar with @JoeWilsonTV, he will be guest co-hosting with me next week. So thank you so much for everyone who tuned in and shared this. I apologize we didn't get to all the questions, but thank you so much again, and hope to see you guys soon. If you want to sign up for the mailing list to just kind of stay in the loop about updates and scheduling, and then kind of look at past episodes. And this is really about kind of building a community around this and getting as many awesome people like Mike and Blake and getting their voice out there and their content that they're creating out to as many people as possible. Because like I said at the beginning, virtual reality and augmented reality are things, they're technologies that are going to impact every industry. So no matter where you are, what you do, somehow this might touch what you're doing. And so there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, for developers, for people to develop new skill sets, for content creators. This is going to change so many things and give so many opportunities to so many people. So we really want to kind of bring people together, and we want to give kind of a platform and a community to exchange those ideas and meet people and hear awesome ideas. So again, next week will be the next episode, and then we'll also be holding some sort of roundtable, open, more casual discussions. So we'll be able to do that as well. But as of now, thank you so much. Mike, I appreciate you. Blake, I appreciate you. Signing off.